Today we're going to be looking at a pair of ultra-compact travel strollers, the Babyjogger City Tour 2 and the Babyzen Yoyo Plus. This is kind of a fun comparison for us, as comparing the original Tour to the original Yoyo, unscripted and in our backyard, was the first real comparison we ever did on our channel. The ultra-compact market has changed a lot since that video, and so it's cool to look at the updated versions of these two models now, and note not only mechanical changes, but also how they currently fit price-wise in the larger market. Mechanically, as I've noted in other videos, the Yoyo didn't really change all that much with the shift to the Yoyo Plus. Just a general ironing out and improvement of the design and the inclusion of a few minor features. But the Tour 2 did change quite a bit, and also now comes in at a higher price point. Back at the time of our original comparison, the Tour, as a sufficiently sturdy alternative to the Yoyo, cost around 2/3 what Babyzen was asking, making price a relatively significant factor to consider. While currently the Tour 2's price hike and the Yoyo Plus's price drop means that both models are more or less at the same level, and will thus, in this comparison, be judged solely by their mechanics, functionality, and the comfort they provide to parents and children alike. Here are the stats. The Yoyo Plus clocks in at 52 by 44 by 18 centimeters versus 56 by 43.5 by 18 centimeters on the Tour 2. And both models weigh virtually the same, at 6.2 versus 6.5 kilos. When it comes to their folded size, the golden standard for all ultra-compacts is, of course, determined by the carry-on luggage requirements of the airlines, which the IATA, the International Air Transport Association, has stated as being 56 by 45 by 25 centimeters. This is merely a suggestion by the association, however, and while both the Tour and the Yoyo meet these guidelines, the Yoyo's shorter 52 centimeters along its widest side does in practice mean that it meets the guidelines of a larger number of airlines than the Tour 2. But realize that by simply removing the wheels, any problems with this can be easily remedied. The Yoyo Plus claims 18 kilos weight capacity in the seat versus 22 on the Tour 2, both of which are more than ample when considering that at 15 kilos, a kid is already usually beyond ready to stop using strollers. Both of these models take 8 kilos in the shopping basket. Okay, let's have a look at comfort, both for you and your child, before getting into mechanics. Both the Yoyo Plus and the Tour 2 have equally sized seats and canopies with comparable coverage, but the addition of a full recline and, more importantly, an inbuilt adjustable leg rest give the Tour 2 a definite advantage when it comes to child comfort. These inclusions are cropping up everywhere on the ultra-compact market, and the leg rest in particular does make a big difference when your kid is napping. Babyzen offers a separate attachable leg rest, but extra accessories like this that need to be attached and detached are usually incompatible with the needs of actually traveling. As far as your own comfort is concerned, both of these strollers are quite easy to fold, with a slight edge going to the Tour 2, since the fold can be accomplished with one hand. There is some added complexity as a result of this, however, which can impact the longevity of the model, but we'll get more into that when discussing mechanics. When folded down, the shoulder strap on the Yoyo Plus makes it a lot easier to carry around than the Tour 2's handle. Babyjogger did put a strap on the carrying bag, but this is a lot less practical in real-world conditions, where the stresses of a tight traveling schedule rarely provide the time to actually pack away your stroller. With regards to fabric quality, both of these strollers are built of more or less the same sort of materials, with relatively equal padding, and are both pretty easy to remove for a wash. Though they have the same weight capacity, I would say the Yoyo Plus's shopping basket is a bit easier to access. When it comes to driving your stroller, these models are going to feel nearly identical. The Yoyo Plus has a slightly higher handle, while the Tour 2 has slightly larger rear wheels. But both chassis have identical front wheels, suspension attributes, and are built with a sturdy rigidity unlikely to get loose and rickety for several years after purchase. There are still some differences, of course, with how they'll perform on the road, but it'll be easier to explain them if we now move on and have a closer look at the specific mechanical differences of these two models. Okay, we're going to look at the mechanics then, and we're going to start with the folding setup on both of these models, starting with the Babyjogger. So the way the Babyjogger folds is you have a safety slider here at the top and a button, and when you pull that together, it first activates the folding mechanism for the handle itself, and also then activates the central fold, which is here. in the center here, right? So the center fold is the same sort of a system that Babyjogger has put on the majority of their models before. If you're curious to see kind of what it looks like inside, we've done several videos on the Babyjogger City Elite where we disassembled it. On this model, it's not as easy to disassemble as it is riveted together as opposed to screwed together, but it is built of very sturdy metal components inside, and it is kind of revolutionary in general across the stroller industry in relation to kind of a solid but easy to function folding mechanism. Now what makes it a little bit different on the Tour 2 is the need to have it activated all the way up at the handle, right? And so whenever you have this sort of a setup, you do have internal wires going from these buttons inside here down to this interim mechanism here on the side, and then from here down to the central fold. And this does add a certain degree of complexity and a certain degree of plastic to what would otherwise have simply been a metal system. Babyjogger City Tour 2 did just come out, so I don't know whether you're going to have any sort of problems with this in the long run, but anytime you have this sort of a setup with a great deal of internal complexity and not very easy to disassemble, there is always a potential that you will wind up with problems down the road. The Yo-Yo, by contrast, has a two-step fold. The first is simply a pair of buttons here, very simple mechanism for releasing the handle height, and the second being a folding mechanism underneath the seat, which is a handle that you press in and depress, and then this allows all of the various folding points along the chassis to fold in towards each other. If you'd like to see how that handle works, we recently did a comparison between the Babyzen Yoyo and the Silver Cross Jet. And in that we actually show that mechanism from underneath. Suffice it to say though that the mechanism is very simple. It does involve a certain degree of plastic, but the plastic components are very thick, very sturdy, and angled and held together in such a way with an eye towards the overall symmetry of all the components around it that I really have never actually seen that mechanism break. Arguably there could be the slightest amount of loosening if you have several years of misuse, but generally that mechanism itself, the handle mechanism, is very tight. What does tend to happen sometimes with the Babyzen Yoyo, again over several years, and assuming that it's been used a little bit over harder terrain with maybe more weight than it should, is you can wind up with some loosening at all of the various non-locking folding points on the chassis itself, which makes it slightly more rickety. Now note that a lot of these points are, pretty much all of the points are put together with screws, so it is possible to tighten them. It is possible to replace any components that have worn down a bit too much. Again though, in general, have never seen that mechanism break. Don't anticipate that I will. There is a certain amount of loosening though over time. Okay, we're going to have a closer look then at the lower rear frame of both of these strollers. Neither of the rear end on either of these strollers has any real suspension. Babyzen claims to have rear wheel suspension. What they're talking about is this mechanism here, which does have a certain amount of like resistance when you're pushing this against each other, but that's not real suspension. So I'm going to say neither of these has real rear wheel suspension, which you don't need on an ultra compact stroller because you're generally going through airports or over relatively smooth terrain. There is slightly larger rear wheels on the Tour. By 1 inch, so that does give a slight advantage when you're trying to go up curbs and stuff. The rear wheels are also removable on the Tour. I actually like removable rear wheels on this sort of a model because then of course you can't replace them, and in particular because of experience with the Babyzen, where over time, and I'm talking a lot of time, if people tend to leave these strollers outside or go to the beach a lot or for whatever reason allow those ball bearings inside the rear wheels to rust, it can be a real pain to actually shift out the rear wheels afterwards since they are not easily removable. That being said, it takes a lot in order for that sort of a problem to occur with the Babyzen Yoyo. When we're talking about brake systems then, the Yoyo has a very simple rotating sort of a brake system. You press the pedal, rotates the bars inside, and then they press up against the gear teeth on the inside, or the brake teeth on the inside of the back wheels. Very simple system. You can lubricate it a little bit. Tends not to have problems. I've actually never seen brake problems on a Yoyo, either of the two generations. Now on the Tour, it does have a wire system running from one side to the other, and the wire itself does not have an adjustment screw. In my opinion, it's a bad idea to produce any sort of a brake system using a wire without an adjustment screw, because eventually the internal conditions of the brake system, be it rust or dust or sand, can tend to make the inside wire slide at sort of a different rate or a different length than the outer housing. And if you have an adjustment screw, you can adjust for that so that you don't wind up with one wheel locking or not locking when you want it to. That being said, Even though they didn't put an adjustment screw, the mechanisms are openable, thus you could replace the wire or other brake components if you needed to. And I do know that at least on the Tour 1 they had a brake replacement kit, because I've swapped it out on the Tour 1 before. So overall it's a slightly more complex system, more prone to have problems, but most likely they will provide you with replacement parts should it be necessary. Okay, let's have a look at the front frame then of both these models. Both of these strollers have 6-inch front wheels, pretty standard. It's on the higher end of standard for ultra compact strollers, so that's just fine as it is. Front wheels are not removable on the Babyzen. Unlike the back wheels, I kind of like it when a stroller of this size has non-removable front wheels, because it means that they can tighten that front fork up against the housing using a lot tighter sort of methods like wave washers and lock washers. You know, making sure that connection point is really, really tight. And what that does for you is that down the road, you wind up not having wobbling problems where the axle has worn down the inside of the housing and is then loose. And if you try to go too fast, the wheel tends to wobble. I've never seen that problem on any of the Babyzen models. I've never actually had a need to replace the entire front fork of a Babyzen at all. On the Tour, the front wheel is removable. And the way the axle has been built and the fork has been built, it doesn't have any sort of internal protection against developing those wobbling problems. So again, the Tour 2 just came out, so I don't know whether it's going to develop wobbling problems down the road. Some strollers do, some strollers don't. But it does not seem to have been built in a way where it's protected against that in relation to how the axle locks into place inside the front housing. It does, however, have a swivel lock. Babyzen doesn't have a swivel lock. In my opinion, swivel locks are really necessary as a countermeasure against wobbling problems as well, because once you start having those wobbling problems, you can at least lock your wheels in an inline position, thus allowing you to still use the stroller. So that's about the swiveling and the wobbling. In general, Babyzen is a little bit better designed in that respect. Both of these strollers do have suspension in the front forks. That's quite standard. And as I said, wheel size is the same. So which of these two is the better ultra-compact travel stroller then? That's a really difficult question. The Babyzen Yoyo has been the premier ultra-compact for so long that even my fingertips feel biased in favor of it, always seeming to tell me that any fold other than the Yoyos is just somehow subtly unnatural. On the other hand, Babyjogger engineering across their line as a whole is significantly sturdier and more ergonomic than so much of the competition that I'm sort of equally biased towards anything they stamp their name on. By trying to look past these inherent biases though, I would say that while the Yoyo Plus still maintains an edge in the simplicity of its design, thus providing fewer factors that can go wrong in the long run, the updated seat capabilities of the Tour 2, both the full recline and the adjustable leg rest, might make it preferable for some people. In all honesty though, if I were currently in need of an ultra compact, I'd still probably go for the Babyzen, but the Tour 2 would probably be my runner-up. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us continue making videos in the future. Thank you.